Welcome back! Tonight we're diving into the untold stories behind Johnny Carson's most awkward interviews. For 30 years, Johnny was America's nightly companion, making every guest feel special. Well, almost every guest. Some guests just didn't click with the king of late night, leading to moments that were tense, awkward, or downright disastrous. From over-rehearsed comedians to unpredictable divas, these interviews tested even Johnny's legendary patience. We're counting down the guests Johnny Carson reportedly couldn't stand, and why. If you remember any of these wild interviews, drop a comment below. Let's get into it. First up, a shocker, Bob Hope. Two comedy legends, but their styles clashed. Johnny thrived on spontaneity and real conversation. Bob Hope, a vaudeville veteran, came armed with pre-written jokes, sticking to his script no matter what. Johnny would try to engage, but Bob would pivot right back to his routine, barely listening. You can see Johnny's frustration in the old clips. He's trying to play jazz, but Bob's marching to his own beat. The staff called Hope's appearances a blessing and a curse, professional, but predictable. For Johnny, who lived for the unpredictable, that was a problem. He wanted to be surprised, to discover something new on live TV. Instead, he got a monologue with interruptions. Behind the scenes, Johnny would brace himself before a Hope segment, knowing he'd have to work extra hard to keep it fresh. He respected Hope as a pioneer, but as a guest, he found him a conversational dead end. What viewers saw as two giants sharing laughs was really a clash of comedy eras. Johnny wanted a living, breathing conversation. Bob Hope delivered a perfectly preserved script. For Carson, the conversation was always king. And with Hope, that magic was hard to find. It was the old guard versus the new, even if they were contemporaries. Sometimes legends just don't mix. This one's a heartbreaker. Joan Rivers. She wasn't just a guest, she was family. Johnny was her mentor, her champion, and made her his permanent guest host. Their chemistry was electric, and she could make Johnny laugh like no one else. But in 1986, everything changed. Fox offered Joan her own late-night show, a dream come true. The problem? She never told Johnny herself. He found out from someone else. For Johnny, it felt like a deep betrayal. Loyalty was everything to him. The fallout was immediate. He never spoke to Joan again, and she was banned from The Tonight Show. Her Fox show flopped, her personal life unraveled, and the man she considered her TV father was gone. She tried to reach out, but Johnny never responded. When Joan finally returned to The Tonight Show decades later, it was a powerful moment, but the rift with Johnny was never healed. Their story is a cautionary tale about friendship, business, and loyalty in showbiz. One missed phone call ended one of comedy's most important relationships. It's a sad chapter, and a reminder of how personal late-night TV could be. For Johnny, trust once broken was never repaired. The ban was total, and the silence lasted a lifetime. Even legends have breaking points. The audience lost a great duo, and late-night TV lost a little of its magic. Sometimes the biggest rifts happen off-camera, and this one was felt for decades. The lesson? In showbiz, loyalty is everything, and sometimes it's all that matters. Now let's talk about Wayne Newton, a confrontation for the ages. Johnny's monologue often poked fun at Vegas acts, especially Newton, with jokes that questioned his masculinity. The audience laughed, but Wayne was not amused. He felt the jokes were mean-spirited and hurtful. The resentment built until Newton decided to confront Johnny on air. He walked out, looked Johnny in the eye, and called him out for the jokes. The audience went silent. Ed McMahon looked nervous. Newton was emotional, even threatening, saying he'd pop Johnny if it continued. Johnny, always the pro, tried to explain it was just comedy, but the damage was done. The rest of the interview was painfully awkward. It was a rare, raw moment, real anger, not a bit. After that, their relationship was never the same. Newton did return, but the tension lingered, and Johnny largely stopped the jokes. It was a reminder that even in comedy, words have consequences. Sometimes the people being roasted aren't laughing. For Johnny, it was a lesson in boundaries. For viewers, it was unforgettable TV. The curtain was pulled back, and the real emotions were on display. Not every guest could take a joke, and sometimes the laughs came at a real cost. The king of late night learned that the hard way. Don Rickles. Johnny loved him, but Rickles was chaos incarnate. Their relationship was legendary, built on mutual respect and relentless insults. Rickles' act was to roast Johnny mercilessly every time he appeared. Johnny would laugh, but Rickles could push the envelope a little too far. There's the famous cigarette box incident. Rickles broke it while guest hosting, and Johnny confronted him live on another show. It was all in good fun, but Rickles' humor was a razor's edge. Sometimes he hit a nerve and you could see Johnny's laugh get a little forced. With Rickles, Johnny had to be on guard the entire time. No relaxing, no letting his guard down. The audience loved it, but for Johnny, it was exhausting. Rickles could derail the show and take control away from the host. Behind the scenes, Johnny respected Rickles' unique talent, but knew he was playing with fire. Every Rickles appearance was event TV, a high-wire act with no net. It wasn't hate, but it was tension. Johnny knew he'd be publicly roasted for 15 minutes, and sometimes it wore him out. Still, he kept inviting Rickles back. The audience couldn't get enough. For Johnny, it was a love-hate thrill ride. Rickles was the only guest who could truly rattle the king of late night, and that's what made their dynamic unforgettable. Sometimes the best TV comes from a little chaos. Shelley Winters, an unpredictable whirlwind. A Hollywood legend, but on The Tonight Show she was pure chaos. Johnny loved control and precision. Shelley brought the opposite. She'd tell endless rambling stories, interrupt everyone, and famously dump drinks on guests. For Johnny, it was a nightmare. He'd lose all control of the segment. You could see the exasperation on his face as Shelley went off script. The crew dreaded her appearances, knowing things would get weird. And probably wet. Johnny would play along, making faces to the camera, but it wasn't his style. He respected her as an actress, but as a guest, she was a liability. It was the ultimate clash. The cool, collected host versus the wild, unpredictable guest. Johnny wanted a conversation. Shelley gave him a one-woman show. The audience loved the unpredictability, but Johnny probably needed a stiff drink after every segment. Shelley's appearances were unforgettable, but for Johnny they were exhausting. Sometimes the best TV is also the most chaotic, and Shelley Winters brought chaos every time. For Johnny, it was a test of patience and professionalism. The result? Memorable TV, and a very relieved host when it was over. Not every legend makes for an easy guest. Arnold Schwarzenegger, less animosity, more disconnect. In the 80s, Arnold was everywhere, promoting his movies on The Tonight Show. But Johnny, a man of words and wit, struggled to connect. The language barrier was real. Arnold's English was improving, but the nuance of Johnny's humor was often lost. Johnny's clever lines would get literal responses, killing the comedic momentum. He'd try to talk bodybuilding, but it was a world Johnny didn't understand or care for. Arnold, ever the marketer, relentlessly plugged his movies, making the interviews feel like commercials. Johnny preferred subtlety. Arnold was all about direct promotion. Their energies clashed. Johnny was cool and ironic. Arnold was earnest and intense. There was no real animosity, just a generational and cultural gap. Johnny was old school. Arnold was the new global brand. Their interviews were rarely bad, but often awkward. Johnny just didn't get Arnold, and it showed. Sometimes, two icons just don't click. The result? Stilted conversations and missed comedic beats. For Johnny, it was a puzzle he never solved. And for viewers, it was a fascinating culture clash. Zsa Zsa Gabor, unpredictable glamour and diva attitude. Famous for being famous, she treated The Tonight Show like her royal court. She'd call Johnny Da Link, sometimes forgetting his name entirely, a subtle insult that drove him nuts. Zsa Zsa loved to talk about her jewels, money, and husbands, topics Johnny found tacky. He'd try to steer the conversation elsewhere, but she always circled back to her wealth. There was the infamous dog incident, her pet misbehaving on set while she chatted away, oblivious. Johnny's frustration was obvious, his dry wit and glances to Ed McMahon said it all. Zsa Zsa's diva demands and self-absorption clashed with Johnny's Midwestern modesty. He remained professional, but his patience was tested every time. She represented everything Johnny disliked: materialism, entitlement, and fame without substance. Each interview was a tightrope walk over a pit of awkwardness. The audience loved the spectacle, but Johnny was counting the seconds to commercial. Sometimes the most glamorous guests are the hardest to handle. For Johnny, Zsa Zsa was a royal pain, but it made for unforgettable TV. And there you have it, guests who pushed Johnny Carson to his limits. Even the smoothest host had his breaking points, and these moments made him more relatable. Producing live TV is a high-wire act, and sometimes the balance is lost. Johnny's genius was turning discomfort into comedy, keeping the show on track. These stories are part of The Tonight Show's wild, wonderful history. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, hit like and subscribe for more classic TV stories. Which guest was the most awkward? Let us know in the comments. See you next time.